So you found the skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts. This is Dapper Reacts, I think 90. My goodness. Yeah, it is 90. Shanti, we're going to have to do something special for Dapper Reacts 100, you know.
Okay.
But for the first thing we want to say is that Hoven's deceased critical thinking brain cell, B2022, has gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. We're going to take 5 drinks to this delicious Sam Adams Oktoberfest. No sponsor, but Sam...
And while you do that,
feel free.
I'm going to read the beer prayer. I received this at DragonCon. Our lager, who art in barrels, hallowed be thy drink. Thy will be drunk, I will be drunk. At home, as in the tavern, give us this day our foamy head, and forgive us our spillages as we forgive those who spill against us. And lead us not into incarceration, but deliver us from hangovers. For thine is the beer, the bitter, and the lager, forever and ever, barmen.
Very nice. I forgot how heavy this beer is. I'm gonna feel like I'm stuffed by the end of this.
Yeah.
It's like drinking a loaf of bread.
But, it is. I mean, that's what beer is, kind of.
I mean, yeah, but
bread.
most of the beer I drink is a little bit lighter.
Dude, that's Sam Adams. They really love the malt, so it's very heavy.
I mean, look, malt is also
favorite
delicious.
Sam Adams little piece of Vishanti lore there for you is that I love Sam Adams. I have had not most of them, but many of them. I used to keep a checklist of all the different Sam Adamses I've drank, and Oktoberfest is my favorite by a country mile.
Nice. Actually, you know, speaking of malt, it's actually pretty good. You can sprinkle it on ice cream. Some powdered malt. It's actually really... Yeah.
You know what else is good on ice cream? Espresso.
Oh, yeah, that too.
And chocolate.
Yeah,
Yes.
and chocolate. Every once in a while, I make fun of Bent because he has basically the same ice cream preferences as Deanna Troi from Star Trek The Next Generation. We should say as many forms of chocolate as possible.
Correct.
So anyway, we're not here to talk...
often side with Deanna Troi on a lot, but her chocolate love, I support it.
I side with her against Picard in Insurrection when there's Picard that's like, hey, could you just keep getting mentally assaulted by the Remans for intelligence purposes? It's like, no, Picard, that is not a thing that you request from someone.
Like, in fact, no.
No, don't
Thanks.
What is wrong with you? That's why I hate movie Picard, because he's just not the same character as show Picard. He's really not. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Star Trek or ice cream or beer. We're here to talk about Pete Greer, because he's talking to us about human evolution, and as you might be able to tell from the title, it's been a while since he's actually touched on human evolution in particular. So we're not expecting him to go back to that anytime soon. But maybe he'll surprise us. Cognitive Trifurcation, who's been a member for 7 months and is at the amnio level, says the radio station I work for is doing fund drive right now, so I have to be at work at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Hopefully the early morning commute isn't an AIG. You know, we'll take a drink for that. I know you're getting there.
Obstinate Sparrow has sugar cookies. Give me sugar cookies.
Also,
I demand.
Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith has joined the channel at the Tetrapod level. Thank you very much. And everyone, send your Tetrapod emojis. Don't send pelagic tunicate emojis. No, if you're going to send a tunicate emoji, send a sessile, surface-dwelling, hardworking, patriotic
Put in those pelagic tunicates for me.
Oh, goodness, Vishant, why would you do that? I should remove that as an emoji.
You would face riots.
I probably would.
You would face an uprising.
Alright, so we are in fact doing the drinking rules, which I explain on Tuesdays. I'm not going to explain them right now. If you don't know what they are, go watch a Tuesday stream sometime. They're fun. So Pete Greer is basically, he's doing the quoting thing, where he's going to just quote some people. One of the things I want to remind you is that quotes aren't evidence of anything, except that the person said the thing, and may or may not agree with what you're trying to make them say. So, yeah. No amount, if every single scientist who was out there had an easily quotable thing saying evolution is fake, though, what that would provide as evidence that evolution is fake is literally nothing. So, yeah. But Shanti, are you likely to be able to become more ready to continue on with Pete Greer in the next 2 minutes? I didn't hear that.
Freshly baked.
Freshly baked.
Freshly baked challah.
Okay.
And it is, Shabbat Shuva. So
In a new
guess I'm as
year.
ready as I'm gonna be. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a slightly
Shana tova umetucha.
slightly belated, but yeah, I managed to get a community post up in time, so that was nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the rare 2-day Chag type of things, so.
Oh, and by the way, hey guys, if you see my community post wishing you a happy holiday that you don't celebrate, you don't have to tell me that you don't celebrate it. It's not necessary. Because every time I do it for a Christian holiday, I get like 10 or 12 comments. That's exaggerating, but I get a fair few comments that are like, oh, actually, I don't celebrate this because I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. I'm wishing a happy whatever
keep scrolling.
to the people who celebrate this holiday. If you don't, that's great. That's great. Just either say thanks
Like when people go,
or move on.
I'm blocking and unfriending. This isn't an airport. You don't have to announce your departure.
Cap Dog Half Canine for $2 says, hold your noses, everyone. We're diving back in. Absolutely. And Vantelli 1998, who's been a member for 47 months and is at the amulet level, says, in the process of moving, currently trying to figure out what I should keep and what I should throw away for my smaller place. Well, first, congratulations on the move. Moves are always... I always have mixed feelings about moves, right? Because on the one hand, it's like, oh, it's nice and exciting and it's a new place. But on the other hand, it's like, it's a hassle and something is going to get lost. So, yeah. Good luck with that, though. All right, here we go. Here's Pete. Pete is going to now quote Dr. Chris Stringer. Somehow that's going to show us that human evolution is actually not true. How? Good question.
Dr. Chris Stringer said, and this is the Natural History Museum of London, and he said, you think apes separated from humans about 5 million years ago?
We're now closer to 6 million, but given that this was 2006 when you said that, I believe that was actually a pretty good estimate for 2006. But, yeah, whatever. Just so you know, probably more like 6, but, it's hard to say. Also, saying humans separated from apes is a weird way to phrase it, because humans are...
Dogs separated from canines.
Right, exactly, right. If ape means something in a scientific sense, then it's identical with hominoidea, which means that humans are apes. Now, if you want to make the argument that ape is a non-technical term that actually excludes humans, that's fine, right? Like, I actually compared it in a video to, like, terms different languages have for non-members of the ethnic group that primarily speaks the language, right? So probably the most obvious one is Gentile, because everyone is familiar with the term. Why do you need a word that means everyone else but not us, even though that puts groups that are closer to you in the same group as groups that are farther away from you? It's because it's sometimes convenient to have a way to say someone who's not us. Ape can be that word, but if you're going to use it that way, then you don't get to use it in discussions about technical things like evolution, right? You can't say that in those contexts because it doesn't mean anything in those contexts. So in the same way that, say, an anthropologist who's studying, like, the migration of people through time and, like, linguistic developments among, like, say, West Semitic speakers probably isn't going to find the word Gentile as a very useful term. Similarly, if you're going to be talking about human evolution, using ape to exclude humans is also not going to be very useful.
Yeah, using Gentile, that's more of like an in-group term. Like, it's not super useful to people who aren't in that group.
Right. It's especially, even if you're in the group, it's not terribly useful if you're doing anthropology studies around, say, like, ancient Canaan.
Yeah.
Yeah. The people living in that area might have found it useful, but you're probably not going to find it very useful because you need to talk about groups that actually exist, not the artificial ones that members of small groups create for themselves. Anyway, here we go.
Although there is no fossil evidence of this period of separation.
Okay, but Pete, what he's saying is that in 2006, they did not have great fossils for an ape that could be a candidate for the common ancestor of, say, chimpanzees and humans from 5 million years ago. And to be fair, we still don't really have that. But that doesn't negate the later fossils that we do have, right? Like saying, hey, we don't have a 6 million year old human chimpanzee common ancestor fossil. Okay, great, but we still do have the, like 4 million year old or so Sahelanthropus chinensis and Ardipithecus ramidus and Australopithecus going on through time. So it's basically what Pete is doing is like saying, oh, hey, you have that 1,000-piece puzzle, but I noticed that you're missing 20 of the pieces. I guess you can't tell what that picture is. In fact, the puzzle's probably fake. Like, yeah, probably not. That's probably not how that works. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $2 says, at Dapper Dinosaur is a cunning linguist. I am, in fact, not a linguist, but I will leave my cunningness up to the chat to decide.
So we think this happened. There's no evidence that it happened, but we think this happened. Once again.
No, did he say no evidence? No, he said no fossil evidence, Pete. I'm taking a drink for that one. Pete, fossil evidence isn't the only evidence, right? Like, think about this. Creationists routinely will say that, say, lions and tigers share a common ancestor. Where's the fossil evidence of that? Where is the common ancestor fossil? We don't have one. There's no fossil that we can point to and say with any degree of certainty, this is the common ancestor between Panthera tigris and Panthera leo. We don't have it. So, does that mean that there's no evidence that lions and tigers share a common ancestor? No, it doesn't, because there's morphological, genetic evidence. All right, go ahead.
The evidence looks like.
Well, actually, for creationists, that often is the evidence for even things they consider.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's
like,
it. That's what they have. The evidence is it looks like.
Well, the thing is that when pushed, the average, like, pro-creationist, who at least has a biology background, would point to the same things that any evolutionary biologist would point to indicate that lions and tigers are very closely related. But we don't have the fossil evidence. Similarly, we don't need the fossil evidence to conclude that two organisms share a common ancestor.
It's just people's ideas, thoughts, imaginations.
Do you think he knows what's in the Bible? Because whatever else it is, it's people's ideas, thoughts, and imagination. Because, like, what else would it be? That's what humans do when they talk to each other, when they write things down, when they discuss things. It's just... saying it's just human thoughts, ideas, and imagination means
they were
nothing.
Just, fleshy skin suit puppets for, his idea of God. Of
course.
They're just stenographers.
And the thing is, even then, it still has to filter through human brains in order to get God's words down. So it's still going to be humans' thoughts, ideas, and imaginations. There's no other option, unless you want to argue that God literally came down with a pen and started writing out parts of the Bible, which...
He magically preserved exactly what he wanted to say, don't you know?
Actually, I don't know, because the verse that's usually used as a proof text for that, the thing that's being preserved isn't even the words. It's the people who are mentioned in the previous verse. Which people could know if they were aware of things like, gender for pronouns. Which it turns out is important for things other than your Twitter bio.
Huh.
And then... because they're evolutionists, people take it as being what we would call in the Christian realm gospel.
No scientific conclusion is taken as gospel in the sense of simply being, I don't want to say assumed, but treated as an unarguable fact. Scientific conclusions are always based on a preponderance of evidence, and they are contingent. The reason that this is so widely accepted is because there's so much evidence for it. That's the difference, right? If you want to dogmatically assert some part of your religious theology, I don't particularly care unless it's either going to be dangerous for people or it directly contradicts science. Short of that, I don't really care. Have whatever, religious dogmas you want within those areas. You're not hurting people, and you're not, like, flatly contradicting science, which itself actually hurts people. Then whatever, right? Like, resurrection of Jesus? Fine. That's fine. As long as you're not saying that that's just a thing that always happens to everyone, because it very much obviously isn't, that would be science denial. Okay, great. You want to say that there's a God who created the universe? Absolutely fine. You want to say that, like, the Buddha is the one who showed you the way to negate your desire so that you can escape samsara? Okay, cool. I'm fine. I don't care. Either way, fine with it. But if you want to start doing things like saying, oh, because of my religious belief, we have to stop teaching science to school children, yeah, that's where I'm going to have a problem with you.
Yeah, look, my religion says I can't do a thing. Great, whatever, live your best life. My religion says stop.
Mm-hmm.
No, where the boundary is. Your religion doesn't get to tell me anything.
Yeah. What if it's my religion says you get to eat at my temple for free because I'm a Sikh? Sorry. I'm okay with that.
I mean, I don't need your religion to tell me that, but cool.
Well, otherwise you'd probably be trespassing and stealing the food. Anyway, I just want to give a shout out to the Sikhs out there because they're an underrepresented group in public life, and also their temples just have free food for people. Just go eat.
Yep.
Which is a pretty awesome community service.
Starving and you happen to be near a Sikh temple, hit them up.
Go in. We'll have some food for you. Plus, it'll probably be like some kind of Indian food soup, which means it's probably going to be pretty good.
Yummy.
Yeah. Philip Half Dog Half Canine for $5 says, by this logic, if you can't pinpoint exact wavelengths of light at which green becomes blue, that means blue isn't a color, I guess. Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's basically the same argument. Like, if you had a spectrum of light and there was some absorption spectra in it, so those areas were missing, that wouldn't be good evidence that those wavelengths don't exist and that the whole spectrum as a whole is basically just bunk. All right, here we go.
The Invisible Eight. Imaginations run riot when we think of our most ancient ancestor that gave rise to both apes and humans.
Does that date say 1641? No, that's a page. No, it doesn't. Page 56, 57. There's a date right at the bottom there. It says volume 120, parenthesis, and it looks like it says 1641. Am I imagining that?
Oh, I see it in the parentheses too.
How? Okay, but that's way too early. The only thing I can think of is that that's a typo for 1941, right? Because 1641 is too early for this. There's no one who was thinking that humans shared a common ancestor with other apes. But in 1941, because the way this is phrased, right, is it has humans as the outgroup to the rest of apes, which was the consensus idea way back in like the early to parts of the middle 20th century. It wasn't until like well into getting into like the late 20th century that we found out that humans actually are closer to chimpanzees, and that group together is actually closer to gorillas, and then that's closer to orangutans, and then it's actually the hylobatids, the gibbons, who are the outgroup to the rest of apes. So I'm pretty sure that he's giving us a 1941 quote, which like, hey man, that's more than 80 years ago, my guy. We've learned a thing. I'm just gonna take a drink for 80-year-old quotes. Even for a creationist, that's a lot. Creationists are usually like 40-ish years out of date. This is double that.
It's not apparent in ape or human anatomy, or in the fossil record. We can't find it in any of those places.
Yeah, man, I'm sure in 1941, back when most of Africa was closed to paleontological research for, various reasons, like, hey, was there anything going on in the 40s that made travel internationally kind of troublesome for most people?
I just remember some mild disagreements happening between European powers, but
yeah, it was probably the French and Indian War. I'm pretty sure that's what was going on in 1941. Yep, probably there were minor little squabbles around the world that might have involved Africa too. Just a thought.
Anatomy and fossil record cannot be relied upon for evolutionary lineages, yet paleontologists, ontologists, persist in doing just this. He said there's no evidence for this to happen. But
yeah, even if that were true in 1941, again, it's the 2020s. Please adapt. And okay, maybe this speech was given in the 2010s. Either way. Mark Akamoto 1313 says, well, what about the Gutsick gibbons? Where do they fit in? How about the rest of the hylobatids as the sister group to all other apes?
We keep doing it anyway. We keep trying to force the issue. And that was an article in the New Scientist magazine. Well, Marvin Lubenow, once again, is a creationist, and he's like the authority from the creationist view of this topic.
You might as well be giving me a quote from Jaron, from Jaronism, because he's the authority for the flat earth side on this topic. It's like anytime you say, well, this guy's like the authority on the creationist side, it's like, okay, so he's the president of Clown University? Got it. Cool. And look, if you're a creationist and you're watching this and that offends you, I'm sorry, but my guys, when the professionals act like basically, I don't know, wits it gets it with a better vocabulary, you're going to have to step things up if you want me to take you seriously. Like, the only creationists that I take even kind of seriously are like Peter and Todd Wood, and I really only take Peter seriously because he's so closely associated with Todd Wood, and also because, nice enough kid. Although I think now I gotta stop calling him a kid. I'm pretty sure he's in college and is a an actual like legal adult and everything. Probably shouldn't call him a kid. Sorry, Peter. Now you're just a guy who still can't drink or rent a car. So get wrecked.
Covering tonight. He says evolutionists give us the dates they want.
Listy said, "What if you're a clown watching this and it offends you? Well, then you're probably a sad clown, and that's probably just right up your alley. That's what you want, right?"
Erectus to have the dates they wish Homo erectus would have. I suspect it is more a case of self-deception on the part of the evolutionists than it is an attempt to deceive others.
I gotta go back.
Juvenal, once again, is a creationist, and he's like the authority from the creationist view of this topic that we're covering tonight. He says evolutionists give us the dates they want Homo erectus to have, the dates they wish Homo erectus would have. I suspect it is more a case of self-deception on the part of the evolutionists than it is an attempt to deceive others.
Okay, so hold on. He's complaining that the dates for Homo erectus are wrong? That's all I'm getting, is that he thinks Homo erectus dates are wrong, but I don't know if he thinks they're too old, if they're too young. He's not telling me what the quote-unquote scientists want the dates to be. Like, I'm very confused what the criticism actually even is. So, like, I'm so confused.
Indicates how deeply their faith has colored their facts. See, we're back to it. It's really a religious belief.
Only
again.
creationists care about faith. Science doesn't care about faith.
Well, I would say that science doesn't care about faith. I don't think it's only creationists who care about faith. I'm sure plenty of like the deistic or the theistic evolutionists do too. But yeah, wow, a bingo already? Interesting.
Yeah,
that's pretty fast.
They're doing what they wish was true, but they don't really know it was true.
Okay, but what does that mean in context? I still don't understand what that quote even was trying to argue. Because you just start off with like, the dates assigned to Homo erectus aren't what the scientists wish they were. I'm like, oh, okay, what do they wish they were? And how do you know they're wrong? And what is getting the date right due to human evolution? I don't get it. You just pull out some random Martin Lubenow or whatever quote that has something to do with human evolution, and I don't know what. And now what's the takeaway? What is the Pete? Help me out, man. Like
from some guy who thinks evolution isn't like provable, and therefore that means it's not because some guy said it.
But he didn't even say it in that. He just said that he thinks the dates are wrong and doesn't tell me what they're supposed to be.
No.
Like, it's like if you tried to argue that, like, I don't know, like T-Rex is, or trying to argue like for the flood geology, right? And someone's like, look, Dapper said that they got the date of when Sue was buried wrong. Sue the T-Rex. It's like, okay, and that's it. You just move on to the next thing.
So what's your point, Vanessa?
Yeah, I don't. Pete, come on.
Richard Leakey, who's in the famous Leakey family, but found this skull 1470, which is in this quote here, which was a very famous skull.
He said 1470.
1470?
Richard Leakey, famous contemporary of Christopher Columbus.
Wait, is he talking about like maybe a specimen number?
No, it says since 1470 was. Okay, hold on. Let's just hear what the quote. Maybe I don't know.
Because it was supposed to transform all of the thinking about our ancestry. He said, if pressed about man's ancestry, I would have to say that all we have is a huge question mark. Oh, that's interesting. Today there's been nothing found to truly purport to be a transitional species to man, including Lucy.
Wrong!
Yeah, I'm going to have to disagree with Mr. Leakey here in this documentary. Carrie Bronson, member for 41 months, says, they're just saying what they want to be true, says guy who begins with the answers pre-decided. Yeah.
Yep.
1470 was as old or probably older. If further pressed, I would have to state that there is...
Okay, it is a specimen number. Okay. Good.
Okay.
We're not talking about the
for a minute there, I was like, what?
Yeah. Well, I mean, given that Pete has apparently recently cited a work that, according to him, is from, 1741, who knows what he's going to come up with next?
more evidence to suggest an abrupt arrival of man rather than a gradual process of evolving. Richard Leakey said that.
Okay, cool. Hey, more recently...
No one cares, dude.
Yeah, there's that. No one cares. And more recently, the number of fossil hominins has become so numerous that it's actually no longer clear that we can actually pinpoint a time or a location or a species where there's a transition from Australopithecus to genus Homo. Because the transition is so smooth and so gradual, and just a continuation of trends that had already been going on in the Australopithecus lineage for millions of years, we're now at the point where, rather than saying, well, we're not sure where the transition is because we don't have enough fossils, we're saying we don't know where to call a transition because it's just a smooth gradient the whole way through, right? And so, we have the opposite problem now. Here, some 35 years later. Well, 34, whatever.
That's very interesting. Now, what you got to know is there's many times that evolutionists put themselves into a corner where they can't look at the facts from a objective point of view because it was...
Just take
That is just some god-tier projection there, my man.
Seriously, get your projectors in chat. My goodness. That is,
wow.
Yeah, wow is right.
Contradict their theory.
I haven't seen that much projection since watching Sinister.
It's good. Watching it in theaters where they were projecting
Right.
the projection.
You
Lizzie,
know, Blumhouse has been doing a tour where they're like rescreening a bunch of their like really big movies, like Insidious.
Mhm.
And I'm pretty sure Sinister was on the docket. And if I haven't already missed it, I would love to see that in an actual theater.
Yeah. Lizzie B, who's been a member for 2 months, says, "Learned my dad is a young Earth creationist thanks to you, Mothra." Well, I'm sorry. I hope that's not causing like family conflict, but I will take the drink for the Mothra.
Mm.
I do hope that isn't causing a whole lot of family conflict. Because look, here's the thing. Like if your dad's an okay dude overall, and you have a pretty good relationship with him, but he happens to be a young Earth creationist, I don't think that that's worth like souring the relationship over. Like I think that's probably not something to. But I mean, then again, if he's a jerk, then who cares, right?
Can't go there.
Aw.
So an anthropologist from Harvard said all the books and book
No
reviews...
one cares.
Yeah, we're gonna skip a
It's
little
not like
bit.
you can hear me, but this is just freaking infuriating.
All right.
And while you skip that, I was incorrect. It's only 4 Blumhouse films that they're putting in theaters. Insidious Chapter 2, Happy Death Day, The Black Phone, and Five Nights at Freddy's.
Wait, they're doing Insidious
the
Chapter
ones
2,
that
but
are-
not Insidious?
Well, those are the ones that are currently listed. I don't know
okay.
if... Let me see if I can find the past ones.
I'm gonna hit play.
equipped them or held them accountable to do so.
We skipped like 4 or 5 more quotes because, like, hey, you know what the conclusion to all quotes is? Who cares? Actually deal with the evidence.
So that's what this is hopefully designed to do, is to equip you so that you can know you are different, and therefore you will behave different and have a different outlook on life.
Pete, okay, so hold on. You're trying to use this as a way to equip presumably young people to know that they're different, because I think the context of this is like someone going off to school to study science and whatnot. And your primary argument for why humans aren't apes and didn't evolve from apes is a bunch of random-ass quotes from as far back as 1940-something, where someone says something that out of context might make you think that they agree with Pete. I can't think of a less convincing way to get people to accept your position than that. I guess quoting people who didn't exist, maybe? Like, Voldemort once said, okay, I guess that is less convincing than, quoting actual scientists. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Blumfest, the only 2 movies that I didn't see on there, Paranormal Activity and Lights Out. So that started Wednesday, September 25th. And then every Wednesday, so October 2nd, the 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th, goes Lights Out, Insidious Chapter 2, Happy Death Day, Black Phone, Five Nights at Freddy's. So if any of y'all want to pull up to your local theaters, check that out.
Also, I'm seeing that we have 96 people watching, but only 42 of you have hit the like button, which means that unfortunately, I like less than half of you, half as well as you deserve. So why don't you hit the like button so you don't have to get Bilbo'd again?
The Bible is an amazing living document that still applies to today's world.
Hold on. Usually the word living document means that it's still subject to additions, deletions, and modification. Right? That's why we say the Constitution is a living document, because it can be amended and has been in the past. And like there are parts of it that no longer operate because later amendments have struck it out and whatnot. Is Pete Greer advocating for an open canon? We'll ask. We're
Bet he
asking
wouldn't
the
if
chat.
you tried to explain his reasoning. He'd be like, "Oh, but no special pleading."
Oh, is Pete advocating for an open canon with one N? The way I remember how many N's to give it is that a cannon, the thing you shoot, is really big, so it gets 2 N's. That's it. That's the whole mnemonic. It's really stupid, but you know what? The stupider a mnemonic is, the better it is.
If it helps people remember the difference between canon with 1 N and canon with 2 N's, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. Look, the rule of thumb for mnemonics is that the stupider or hornier they are, the better and more effective they're going to be. So just stop trying to fight the fact that most of them are one of those two things, because they're more effective that way.
For all of you musicians in the audience, we've heard the acronym FACE for the spaces on a treble clef, but for the lines, there's a lot of like mnemonics for that one. Like every good boy does fine, which is boring. But if you want to remember the circle of fifths with the dumbest mnemonic possible, I'm here for you. Fat cats get dumb after eating bagels.
Nice.
You're welcome.
And can apply to our thinking in every area. And on the 10 Commandments, God inscribed the 10 Commandments that the world was made in 6 days. And he also
I want to know how what throughout most of Christendom has always been called the Decalogue, using the Latin for the 10 words. In English ended up as the 10 Commandments. I want to know how that happened. Because calling it the 10 words goes all the way back to, like, you know, pre-first century traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Second
English
Temple
is just,
Judaism.
yeah, and then English is just like, what if we call them commandments? And it's like, why would you do that? Why would you change it, English?
Yeah, because at least 3 of them aren't actual commandments.
Yeah. In fact, actually,
I am the Lord your God. That's not a commandment.
Yeah. I think I actually have at least 2 Bibles where it's the subheading for that section is still Decalogue. And guess what? None of them are Protestant Bibles.
Well, what a shock.
the scriptures that we have in the whole.
Oh, wait. Roshan of Fahaku God's Minion Keller for $4.99 says, I finally got a YouTube notification and I come into this 3/5 discussion. What? I don't know what the 3/5 part means, but sorry that you only got it late.
3/5 compromise.
Well, what does that have to do with the... Were we talking about that? I'm so confused. Also, remember, the people advocating for the 3/5 were the people who were anti-slavery and who didn't want slaves to count in the census at all, to weaken the power of slave states. Because remember, that census that was apportioning congressional representation, the reason that the slave owners wanted their slaves to count isn't because they thought of their slaves particularly like persons, it's because they wanted more representatives in the House of Representatives.
Yeah,
and the abolitionists were like, no, if these people don't get to vote, they don't get to be counted in your damn census.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like all the slavers were like, well, we want the bodies to count for, you know, our representation in government, but we don't want them to be able to vote.
Right.
That's crazy talk.
No, we should get the power that having them as part of our population would give us, but we're not going to use any of that power for that. We're going to use it against them.
Of course not.
Yeah. So, like, yeah. Remember, the idea was never that they counted as 3/5 of a person. It was one side, the anti-slavery side, was like, they shouldn't count in the census at all so that you don't get power, slave owners. And the slave owners were like, despite the fact that we're not going to treat them like people, we want to count them like people. So,
and yet the Electoral College still favored slave states. What a bee.
Well, 3/5 is more than half. So, you know. But yeah, I'm just pointing out, because almost everyone gets the context of the 3/5 compromise wrong. They're all like, oh, see, they just thought that the slaves were 3/5 of a person. It's like, no, that was never how it worked. Ever. Coop23 for $5 says, my favorite mnemonic is dumb kids playing chase on freeways get squashed for taxonomy. Oh, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus,
Order, family,
species.
genus,
Yeah,
species.
okay, I like it.
Love
See,
it.
When I
Love
was
that.
when I was going through school, domain was not really in like the school curricula yet, so we didn't get one for that. Roshan of Fahako God's minion Keller 499 says you were talking about the part of the Constitution being wiped away by amendments. I mean, yes, I was. I mean, it's not physically wiped away; like you can still go look at it, but there are parts of the Constitution that are no longer in operation because they've been abridged by later amendments. Like the original method for like picking senators, which was by like state legislature, that's gone now with popular vote.
Holy Bible today. Showing the authenticity of Scripture is another presentation, but let me just say that the earth being a...
I do and I don't want to see his presentation on proving the like authority of Scripture, because based on how this goes, I can't imagine it's going to be anything other than the most brain-dead thing I have seen in
sphere and the earth hanging on nothing. I don't know of any earlier...
The Bible nowhere says that the earth is a sphere. Not anywhere. It does say it hangs on nothing in some places, but in other places it says it rests on pillars. So, like, that's just a contradiction. And sure, hanging on nothing is compatible, I suppose. Although I wouldn't say the earth hangs on anything, never mind nothing. But whatever, I don't know. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing in the Bible that indicates the earth is a sphere. If you want to take the Bible as its original authors intended and as its initial audiences would take it, the Bible assumes a flat earth. I don't think it's ever the goal of any of the Bible authors to teach you about the shape of the earth, but it very clearly assumes a flat earth with a dome over it that has waters above and below the dome, well, above the dome and below the ground, which God can let in. Jake, insert clever dapper inside joke here. Nelson, who's been a member for 21 months, is at the amniote level, says, the taxonomy one I learned was King Philip crossed over from Germany stoned.
Meh.
That's not bad. All right, here we go.
Place where it talks about that than in the Bible, showing that God had to author it. He had to author it. I'll show you a couple more examples of that.
Imagine thinking that one of your reasons to accept the Bible as authoritative is that it so clearly proposes that the earth is a globe, while also living in a world where one of the biggest reasons that there's still a flat earth contingent out there is that the Bible very obviously advocates for the opposite, if it advocates for either. Oh, man. Harry Bronson for $2 says, the Flurfs think those passages support them, QED. And here's the thing. They're right about that. The Flurfs are usually more right about the shape of the earth in the Bible than most other Christians are. Actually, I'm not going to say that. Than most Christians who proclaim to have literalist interpretations of these passages.
Yeah.
Which is not, in fact, as far as I know, most Christians. I suspect most Christians don't, but then again, I don't have a census handy. Roshan of Fahako God's minion Keller for $1.99 says it hangs on nothing because it sits on pillars. I mean, yeah, that actually could be...
checkmate.
Yeah, maybe that is actually the harmonization there. Yeah. Not the one that Pete would want. But yeah, look, please, people out there who want to argue that the Bible is authoritative for something, I promise you, almost any argument is going to be more effective than that the Bible says that the earth is a globe. Because it absolutely does not. Even if your particular translation of the Bible mistranslates certain passages to indicate the spherical shape of the earth, that wasn't in the original. Now, if you want to argue that the authors of the New Testament probably thought the earth was a globe, I'd probably agree with you. And then you might say, well, what about going to a mountain that could show all the kingdoms on earth? Well, here's the problem. They only knew about less than one hemisphere. And on less than one hemisphere, you could at least hypothetically have a mountain tall enough to show you all those kingdoms. So there was no idea that Jesus was going to be able to see kingdoms that they didn't even know existed. But yeah, the New Testament authors probably thought that the earth was a sphere because basically all the Greeks, Jews, and Romans by that point had kind of conned on that, the earth is a globe. They all had figured it out, mostly by just checking up on the Greeks. They were like, hey, Greeks, what's up with that?
Eratosthenes had already done his thing like a couple centuries before that, so...
Yep. So...
As we go along here, God said, this is how life came on earth, according to God. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the
hour there, Pete.
Oh, he's going to say it's the Trinity.
Oh.
Because the author of this section of Genesis had in mind a philosophical development of like the 2nd or 3rd century that definitely he already knew about.
Sure.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Don't connect it to any contemporary ideas like a divine council. No.
Mm-mm-mm.
The sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female, he created them.
We about to get some transphobia?
Well, okay, first of all, yeah, probably. But second, here's a little rhetorical thing, Pete. Your audience already knows all of this, and the entire point of your talk is that this isn't what the scientific consensus is, and you're agreeing with this part. Spending this point here, now almost an hour in, to remind your audience of the entire point of your talk is kind of worthless. You're wasting your time.
Jesus quoted this in Matthew and Mark.
He sure did. Take a drink. That's true.
He created them. I have that later on, so I'll get to it in a minute. Oh, this is it. Okay,
Also,
sorry.
Mark
And
Agamotto is asking, isn't Elohim plural? There are some contexts where the other words in the sentence will let you know if it's plural or not. Like if the verbs that are talking about those Elohim are plural. That word Elohim is not always plural.
Yeah. It has the form of a plural word. But yeah, you have to check text.
You have to look at the context. Like if the other words in the sentence are all singular, it's most likely referring to a singular.
Especially if it's the subject of a verb, it's very easy to tell. Is the verb inflected such that it has a plural subject or a singular subject? If it's singular, well, guess what? As it is throughout most of Genesis, where Elohim is the subject of a verb.
Jesus answered and said to them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. Marriage is instituted.
Okay, we're going to go from 0 to either homophobic or transphobic, or both. Here, I'm guessing, within like the next 20 seconds.
In the beginning he made them male and female. John tells us that Jesus is the creator. Jesus knows that Adam and Eve were created in the beginning, not after millions of years of evolution.
Oh, so far he hasn't. I'm actually pretty surprised he's going this long without going.
Let him cook.
Hey.
As progressive
creationists
and theistic evolutionists say. He should know, since he was there. That's an eyewitness account. So...
No, it's not, Pete.
It's really not. But
God, that's so dumb.
I will say, I'm surprised he hasn't done it yet.
Doubt that they were made in the beginning because Jesus said it. That he's my Lord, and what my Lord says, I should believe also. For you form my inward parts is what
interpreting
we
that
learn.
psalm that way.
Okay.
That drives me up the wall.
But I am going to say he did not use that passage to go homophobic or transphobic. So you know what? While I still suspect he is both of those things, I'm going to give him props for not taking every opportunity to go for it. So you know what? Cheers, Pete. Way to go. I'll take a drink for you not being
Bars
the
in
worst
hell.
you could be.
Congratulations, Pete.
I mean, it is in hell, but that's still a bar that he cleared. And you know how few of them do clear that bar? It's so few.
In the Psalms, you covered me in my mother's womb.
All right, cool.
And things to get stuck with. I think this can evolve the culture we call the womb.
We're going to get out of the scripture parts. Now he's going to talk to us about the anatomy of the ear. So.
Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there was none of them. So for a Christian, this is what we say, that from the very moment of inception, God is looking on at the development of every human being in the mother's womb, and any time that you end the life of that embryo, whatever you want to call it, you end the life of
abortion, take a drink.
Part of God's special creation. And that's why most Christians that have the biblical view, and the literal reading of the Bible
it would be nice if they were viable from the instance of fertilization, but they're not. And if you were to look at an egg yolk, I mean, why do you eat egg yolks? Those are just chickens.
Well, I mean, they're haploid chicken cells. Unfertilized chicken eggs can't develop
again,
chicken.
this is the thing. It's like, look, if you want to argue, oh, but that's a human being. Yeah, we know it's a human being. It's just not like a viable person yet. So
yeah. So
dumb. Also, I remember there have been many teachers of mine that have repeatedly emphasized that you probably shouldn't be taking doctrine out of the Psalms because those are like poetic and they're hymns and they're song lyrics. So maybe you shouldn't be reading those the same as like legal sections or narrative sections. Just saying.
got a couple super chats. Roshan of Hakugod's Minion Keller for $4.99 says, it's like Friends, singular when talking about the TV show, plural when talking about the characters. Friends is a mid-TV show. There you go.
Yeah.
Whereas my friends are coming over for lunch. Heather Schrodinger's Fossil Coon for $5 says, a slacktivist summary of a sermon. First you tell your audience what you're going to say, then you say it, then you remind them of what you said. Yeah, okay, to be fair, that is how a lot of sermons go. It's almost like that's one of my reasons why sermons are one of my least favorite forms of, like...
Oratory?
Yeah, there you go, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was having trouble with that one. Alright, so we apparently got out of the Pete vomits the Bible at us, which... As someone who actually does rather like the Bible, I'm okay with having people tell me about the Bible. It's just that it's a context thing. If you want to say humans didn't evolve, I don't care what the Bible has to say about it, except that I know that that's your motive for, wanting to say that they didn't evolve. All right, here we go.
Of our human body senses to show you that if you think this can evolve, well, you got to really have a lot of faith.
In what, Pete? Because let's remember that the mechanisms of evolution are all of them observed in the current day. Every single one is currently being observed right now by someone studying evolution. So it's not clear to me what extra thing you think is in there that would require faith, right? Mutations occur, selection occurs, drift occurs. We can watch things like niche partitioning and adaptive radiations happen in real time, even in vertebrates. Like, which part of this is the part that needs faith, Pete? I haven't really helped with that.
To believe that. We got this funny looking thing on the outside of our heads.
The oracle?
The oracle or the pinna, some people call it. And it collects sound. It's designed to collect sound, uniquely designed to collect sound.
I mean, is it uniquely designed? Because I hate to break it to you, Pete, but your oracle has almost exactly the same shape as chimpanzees. So, like, when pointing to the human oracle as evidence against evolution, maybe don't point to a structure of the anatomy that has some of the closest identity with those of chimpanzees. Because here's the thing. Okay, this is a little gruesome, but
ours is different because of reasons.
That's the thing, though. It's not even really different. If you were to remove a chimp ear and a human ear and hold them side by side, my guess is that most people would have trouble figuring out which one was human and which one was chimpanzee. Those are parts of the body that are virtually identical between those two species.
Yeah. But again, his counter to that would be, well, ours is special because of reasons.
Right. As to Lucifer is my headmate Ryu for $4.99 says, if abortion is murder because the embryo can become a human, then dismantling AIG is castration because the scientists who joined sure to become, we'll take a drink for that.
Amazing.
One of the only times I'm in favor of castration is in dismantling AIG.
Yeah.
Roshan of Fahako God's Minion Keller for $4.99 says, it requires faith to not believe humans are special creations. Yeah, it is. I always hate those, like...
Yeah, this whole thing, like, the way that people use the word faith, I can't get consistent definitions because what they really mean is emotional trust. Yeah. And that's just how people use it. And like there are various definitions given in the New Testament. There's people's opinions and all of like their special artisanal, reasonings. And I don't care because it's all just emotional trust.
Vadim Ranchenko says, aren't chimp ears black/dark? Yes, but here's a fun fact. So are many human ears, because as a matter of fact, dark-skinned people also exist. Reminds me of something I saw on Twitter where there's a bartender talking about an 18-year-old kid who decided to cut himself off. And was like, I was proud of that kid. And someone comes in and says, actually, the drinking age is 21 in all states. And so the response was just like, I, like dozens of other people on this website, am not from America.
Yep. I'm getting really frustrated at the constant sounds of, like, jets.
If it helps, they don't come
in
through.
My neighborhood. Yeah, I mean, the gate time's set really high on my mic, but also it's driving me nuts. Like, every 20, 30 minutes I hear...
Sorry. We should just end all air travel.
Those hairs there are not part of our sense of hearing, but they are there to help protect your body against, dirt and things.
Means that He means the hair at the entrance to your ear, which is true. They're not there to help as part of your sense of hearing. So, you know, like when you get like really old guys and they have the hair that kind of sticks out of their ear, that's the kind of hairs he's talking about. He's right. We'll take a drink because he's right about that. Those do not give you your sense of hearing. Other hairs inside your ear do. The Salt Geek Beyond, member for 17 months at the annual level, says, "Hey yo, still not fully recovered nor fully caught up on Dapper content, but I'm getting there. Comment, like, and support where you can. Don't be a Bilbo." Exactly. Exactly. Thank you very much, the Salt Geek.
Getting in your ear, along with, you know, we have wax that forms that allows things to get stuck before they can get in and do us harm. So then it goes down this ear canal. The ear canal has a slight narrowing there, but when you look at what that does, it actually increases the amplitude of the sound. It's designed to make it so that the amplitude is greater. Then it goes to that next thing. That's the eardrum, that thing that's covering the ear canal there.
That thing that you're currently trying to scrape nails against with this horrible audio? Got it.
And it's a membrane that covers it, so we've had these vibrations going through the airwaves. Now they hit this, it becomes a mechanical vibration. The eardrum starts vibrating. Mm-hmm. Connected to the eardrum are the three smallest...
Okay, I want to point out, which part of this that he's describing is different between humans and other apes?
What part of what he's saying is evidence that evolution didn't happen?
None of it. But specifically, even if we want to say that humans didn't evolve from apes, nothing that he's pointing out here is a difference between humans and other apes. This is how all ape ears work, because this is actually just broadly how mammal ears work. So, pointing to something that's basically just common to all of mammals, as if that is evidence that humans didn't evolve from apes, is kind of weird. Because here's the thing, right? You could make the argument that maybe humans didn't evolve from... Maybe mammals don't all share common ancestry. Humans do share common ancestry with apes, right? That's a position that one could take. And he's not even combating that position, right? Never mind the position that, you know, humans didn't evolve at all. Like, what is your actual goal? Because in order to show that humans aren't apes... Okay, look, this is just a tip for creationists generally. If you want to say that X is not a member of group Y, your first step is to define group Y in a way that corresponds to basically including all the members that people normally think of are in group Y, or the ones that scientists think are in group Y. Then you take X and you show why it doesn't meet the definition of Y. So if you want to say humans aren't apes, your first step is, well, what do I mean by ape? And then you give a non-special pleading definition for ape that can successfully pull all the apes out of all other living things. And then you say, okay, and here's why humans aren't that. And then you show how humans don't meet the definition that you set up. Ape. That is never the path that creationists ever go. And you know why they can't go that way? Because there's no way to define ape that doesn't include humans, unless you special plead. Max P, who's been a member for 3 months, says, "I have no cochlear hairs. I have cochlear implants." Oh, all right. Neat. Although I will say, I
figured out what it is.
What's the it?
The Pacific Air Show in Huntington Beach.
Oh.
All weekend. Through 10:30 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon.
Well,
I love that.
That is unfortunate.
The flyovers will include an F-22 Raptor demo team, a U.S. Army Black Hawk and Lakota helicopters, the Patriots jet team, as well as a final parting and performance from the Air Force A-10 demo team.
Oh. Half dog, half canine for $5 says, "To borrow a tactic apologists use all the time, now prove that evolution couldn't do it, Pete." I mean, yeah. Actually, that is one of the tactics that creationists try to do, is they try to come up with reasons why evolution couldn't do a thing. And the problem with that is that the only thing you need to do to defeat that argument is show one plausible way that evolution could do it, and that's it. And it doesn't even have to be the way that it actually evolved. As long as it's a plausible, possible pathway, you're good.
Bones of the human body. They're called the incus, the malleus, and the stapes, or...
Hey, Pete.
Wow, tiny bones, therefore God.
So here's an interesting thing about those bones, though. 2 of them actually start out embryonically at the back of your lower jaw. And then as you grow in the womb, they actually migrate into the middle ear. Now, in fossils, we actually have fossils of basic basal stem mammals, where those bones are actually migrating up the jaw and into the ear. And in some marsupials, when they're born, those bones are actually still in the jaw, and they only migrate into the inner ear afterwards. So why do we have this correspondence between the fossil location of these bones and increasingly mammal-like organisms that are getting younger and younger as we go through this transition? And we have the same transition happening in embryo. It's almost like these bones themselves are actually excellent evidence of the evolution of mammals as a whole, not just humans. Roshan of Hakugan's Minion Keller for $4.99 says, speaking of AIG, I was just cleaning out gallons of empty toilet paper rolls and bags from my bathroom floor and found a full roll of TP. Well, congratulations.
Nice.
And I'll take a drink for the AIG, although I'm not sure entirely that it counts, but you know what? I'm thirsty.
This comment by Fearmonger I feel is worth repeating. You know the funniest part of the God of the Gaps fallacy? It's almost always just knowledge gaps of the speaker, not science.
Yeah, that does happen a lot. Mm-hmm.
The common names hammer, anvil, and stirrup. Those things would fit on the tip of your little finger. They are connected
Again,
in such
tiny bones, therefore God?
Yeah, and it's like, yep, small bones exist. They sure do. I'm not sure why evolution would have more trouble with small rather than big bones. I don't understand what's the point?
way that they, once again, not only keep the integrity, but increase the integrity of that sound impulse.
Things evolve to do specific functions. Okay,
yeah, and also the homologs of those bones in animals that still have all those bones in the jaw, like most reptiles, those bones are still involved in hearing anyway. So it's like, this isn't a new function. They ceased to function as jaw bones and kept their hearing function. So like, yeah, I don't know what the point is. As
it goes through there, this is a lever system. So now we got a lever system, and it goes.
So you're telling me that the ear is a Rube Goldberg machine, and you think that that is in itself evidence for God? Okay, kind of a weird sort of God, but sure, I guess.
Yeah, weird flex, but all right.
You know how many single points of failure there are in that ear structure? You know that maybe that's a reason why deafness is a relatively common thing for humans.
Yeah, I will give this one piece of advice before we inevitably go to a break. I don't care how dumb it makes you feel. Please wear earplugs at live shows.
Yes.
Folks, please. I will beg you for the sake of your hearing, because that, oh my gosh, my ears are ringing and I can't hear a whole lot the day after because the speakers were so loud. That's not good.
Yeah, that's you having permanent
once
hearing
those
loss.
Once the filaments in your inner ear break, they don't just regrow. Yeah. So, please plan accordingly. Mm-hmm. I started wearing earplugs at live shows when I was in high school and while I was in the drumline, and it has absolutely made a world of difference in keeping my hearing.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you know people who you were doing those things with who have much worse hearing than you do as a result of not putting in earplugs. Yeah,
the nice thing was that most of us, at least on the drumline, most of us had earplugs that we kept with us, and I remember at some point we all got a pair of the bright orange ones that had the little connector plastic necktie on it. So, telling you that stuff's invaluable.
Yeah, Savage Cobra, the Ediacara invertebrate for $9.99 says, in most people, knowledge gaps exist, even the things they understand. In Pete's case, there are tiny islands of knowledge interspersed between oceans of ignorance. Yeah, and here's the thing: I used to give Pete a pretty big pass because he's just some elder in a church. No, it turns out this dude has a master's degree in biology. He doesn't actually get that pass. Mm. Yeah, I looked into it.
Yeah, I know, he's just lying.
Mm-hmm. All right, so what we're gonna do?
Punk is saying alternative strategy: be too poor to buy tickets for live shows. Well, it can also apply to your earbuds as well. So
don't turn your earbuds up too much.
Yeah, please be kind to your ears.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to grab myself another bottle of beer, and we'll probably play an ad and also some Beethoven stuff. So we'll be back in just a little bit. we are back. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Actually, I think we gained viewers during the break, so thank you very much. That's pretty unusual. I'm seeing 128, but only 87 likes, which is not a Bilbo time, but still, help me out. With that, I'm going to also say that this channel is almost entirely supported directly through your contributions as viewers, whether it be as super chatters, whether it be as members, patrons, and whatnot. If you're not currently supporting, but you're interested in doing so, the two best ways are probably Patreon first, and then channel members as a close second. Those are the places where I get to keep a whole lot of the money. Patreon, the most of it. Patreon starts at $1 a month. The membership started at $1.99 a month. You can get a 15% discount if you pledge annually on Patreon. And both of those give you early access to my scripted videos. They give you access to the server, the Discord server that is just for my supporters, which is I think it's a pretty cool place. I mean, I ask the people who are in it, who are many of the people in this chat. I think they all enjoy it. So, yeah. Let's see. There's also, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't your thing, there's also a merch store right below this video. Also, both Vishanti and I have wish lists that are either linked to the description, or if I forgot to link hers in the description, at the very least, her channel is in the description, so you can click onto that, and there's a link right there. And if I have forgotten, I'll double check at the end of this and make sure I put it in there.
Yes. And this is my periodic expression of gratitude for anyone who has gotten things for me off the wish list, because they have qualitatively improved my life. And it means a lot to me to have just folks I've really never met in person send me things that I need. So thank you.
Yes. And then, and if any kind of financial support is not in the cards for you right now, either because you don't really want to do that, or because you can't afford it, which, please, if you can't afford it, do not give any money. Remember, liking and sharing these videos and watching a few of my videos always helps. And if you really want to help out, one of the things I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the memberships and super chats and super thanks and whatnot enabled over on my second channel, Top Hats Off, which is well on the way. We're about a third of the way there, as of just like the last 2 months. Got like a third of the way there. I want to say thank you for that. And if you want to help out with that, the thing I need right now is watch time. So if you want to go over and put on one of my playlists over on Top Hats Off, and just leave it on in the background, it would be greatly appreciated, because that increases my watch time. Now we got a couple super chats. Asked to Lucifer is my headmate Ryu for $9.99 says, the comment on earbuds reminds me, recently made my Jabra Elite 8 Active's left speaker went out, which apparently caused it to make a sharp popping noise instead of music that I think damaged my hearing. Ouch! That sounds very unpleasant. I'm sorry to hear that. Goodness. And then for $2, Hibblepunk, half dog, half canine, says, double Bilbo all the way across the sky. Thank you very much. All right, here's Pete.
On the other side of the inner middle ear is the oval window. Mm-hmm. And so the stirrup is up against the oval window, and it vibrates the oval window. Well,
I want to point out that there are losses at every single step of this point, right? Because anytime you have an interface, you're going to have losses. So your hearing could, at least hypothetically, be sharper if you had fewer steps, where there is a potential for like friction and mechanical loss of the signal. So like, it's not ideal. There's a reason why microphones don't include like 8 different steps between getting the vibration to an electrical signal, right? It's like one step. You vibrate something, or maybe 2 steps, right? Like you have a big thing to catch the vibration, and then it vibrates something that has some kind of piezoelectric ability, which then generates directly an electrical signal. There's a reason that you don't have like 8 different gears in your microphone to transfer the sound. Because it's a dumb design to do it that way. And yet, that's the design mammals went with. It's almost like complexity is actually not a hallmark of design, and that simplicity is an actual hallmark of design.
Things on the top there, the big loops that's your semicircular canals. That's once again to do with balance when you go.
Hey, did you know that other apes have semicircular canals that help them with their balance? It turns out it's kind of important if you're going to do things like swing through trees to have a good sense of balance. What do you know? Imagine if you were a dizzy chimpanzee trying to like hunt a monkey while swinging through trees. What a disaster that would be. You might fall to your death if you tried that.
Get all crazy, you can't stand up and stuff. it turned around in circles for a long time.
Trifurcation says, excuse you, I work in a radio station and all our mics are operated by speaking into a set of 12 pairs of cups, each pair connected by string.
Get really dizzy, you've messed up the fluid in the semicircular canals. But the inner ear, that snail-looking thing, there's canals in there, fluid-filled canals. So this...
I mean, it's more like a fluid-filled canal, but yeah, okay.
Oval window vibrates the fluid in the outside two canals, and they vibrate the fluid on the inside canal with a little bit different vibration. And inside there is something called the organ of corti, which is simply these hairs in there, and they're the hairs
take a drink
are in
because
the
he's
fluid,
not
and the
wrong.
fluid makes
I
the
just
hairs
don't
go
know
back
what
and
the point
forth, and
is.
they rub against the membrane of the organ of corti, and when they rub against it, that sends an electrical stimulus to the brain, and you hear a sound.
Okay.
So we went from air vibrations, mechanical lever vibrations, to fluid vibrations, to hairs that rub against the membrane that cause an electrical stimulus to go to the brain. Your brain has to interpret that electrical stimulation.
And you don't see why that's a really, really dumb design? Like, what is happening right now? Because clearly he's very impressed by this, right? But I'm sitting here thinking like, gee, that's a whole lot of points of failure. That's a needlessly complex design. That's kind of stupid. Like, no one designs microphones this way. Because remember, a microphone is basically just the biological analog, the technological analog for an ear, right? How does the computer know what I'm saying? Well, know what sounds I'm making so that it can transmit it to you? Through this little microphone. And this microphone does not use nearly that many steps. And also, this microphone, or at least humans can make microphones that use far fewer steps, that are far better than human ears at whatever you want, whatever metric you want to use, whether it be range of vibrations that can be picked up, whether it be sensitivity to quiet sounds, whatever you want.
And make it into a sound. Now, folks, if anybody can believe that that came about slowly over millions of years of chance and random processes, that's your right for you to believe that. But
so instead,
if you want to believe that magic brought people here and magic kept them alive and that magic stopped the earth from turning into basically a new star during your flood and that magically none of that left any evidence, well, that's your business.
Yeah. And remember, like, here are the options that we're being given. One is this crazy nonsense full of all sorts of failure points that frequently does fail. And just in ordinary life, right? Like, most people have hearing loss by the end of their lives, which means that this organ is just kind of bad overall. And it has all these extra weird steps, every single one of which has losses involved. You can believe that that was actually designed by the smartest imaginable being. Despite the fact that humans, with their limited intelligence and capacity, can design much, much better sound receptors. That's one option. Or you could believe that, yeah, this is just kind of thrown together by millions of years of contingency. To me, it looks like something that's been thrown together by millions of years of contingency. I don't know. Maybe that's just a me thing. But to me, this much more looks like millions of years of just kind of nature being like, this will work.
I think that takes a whole lot more faith than for me to believe that God designed that.
I don't see
fully
why.
Functional from the beginning.
Well, except the great thing is we have all the evolutionary stages of the evolution of the mammalian ear in the fossil record. We don't actually have to wonder about it. It's all right there. We know it evolved because we have the transition form. We know what those bones are, both because of embryology and because of fossil evidence. We even have animals with double jaw joints, and they're screwed up that counter a little bit, so we'll take a drink for Dapper the Professional. But we have animals like Proboscis, who's in the slideshow, by the way, that have double jaw joints. So they have the dentary squamosal and also the articular quadrate connection in the skull, which is the two different kinds of skull or jaw joints that are in animals. Most tetrapods have the quadrate articular jaw joint, and mammals have a dental squamosal jaw joint. And we have animals with both, with those bones in the jaw already starting to migrate towards the position of the middle ear. Like, my goodness. Max P for $5 says, actually, cochlear implants still leave you with a mild hearing loss. Not entirely sure why. Well, my guess is that they just can't make a microphone that completely interfaces perfectly with the human body that small. That would be my guess. I'm not a doctor, though. So, don't take my word for it. Ba-dum-bum.
So we gotta love life, and for Christians, we want to defend life.
Are we really back on abortion?
So
okay, no, we're moving on. Okay, fine.
I would believe them if when they said that they cared about human life, if they actually gave a damn about human life once it's out of the womb. But, until that day, I'm just gonna call them liars and fetishists.
We're evolutionized because we are. From our culture. We are evolutionized, and it's taken me years to get that type of thinking out.
You've been evolutionized by the culture, Vishanti.
Okay, uh-huh.
Hopefully he'll explain what that means.
No, he won't.
Ways of thinking. I catch myself falling back every once in a while. But the question for tonight, how many different races are there in the world today?
0. If you're talking about humans. What are our options? A is 1, B is 6, 8 is C, and D is more than 10, and E is it doesn't matter. Okay, well, where's the actual
None
answer?
of those are correct.
I guess you could say A is
the correct answer is that race is a social construct.
Yeah, I guess you could say A is kind of right, because 1 and 0 in this context are basically the same thing. Because you could say that we're all actually the same race, the human race, which, okay, fine, whatever. Or you could say that there are no racial categories that biologically exist, which would mean it's 0. So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make this as a poll, because I do polls when the creationists ask questions, right? So, all right, we're going to start a poll. And I'm going to say, how many races, how many human races, there we go, exist?
He didn't specify human.
Yeah, but all he's showing is humans, and this is to talk about human evolution. We're going to say 0 / 1, because I think those are basically
I was going to say, I can think of at least, 3 off the top of my head. The Indy 500, Talladega, Daytona.
So we have 0, 1, 6, 8, and 10 plus. It doesn't matter. I don't, whatever. Can't put that many options. Let's see. Roshan of Hakugod's minion Keller for $4.99 says, we not only have the million ears in the fossil record, we have nearly every step in extant animals. That's true. Yeah. And Asa Lucifer is my headmate Ryu $4.99 says, evolutionized. These are the people 52% of the country thinks should lead it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to talk about U.S. politics today. It's already enough of a gigantic shit show.
1, 6, 8, more than 10, or it doesn't matter, or the choices.
I mean, really, it doesn't matter, but, there is a numerical answer. Because the thing is, even if there were actual human races, biological groups of humans that had more intergroup diversity than intragroup diversity, which doesn't exist, it's not a real thing. But even if there were such groups, I don't see what information you would what would you do with that information, right? Does that inform you how you should treat people? No. Does it inform you what rights or privileges or obligations people have towards each other? Would it be different based on that? No. So I do think that it actually doesn't matter, because the thing is, while the so-called scientific racists or the race realists are wrong, even if they were right about the science, which again they're not, but even if they were, it wouldn't actually be a good reason to then actually be a bigot, right? It doesn't actually work that way. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $5 says, NASCAR F1 modified funny car street monster truck drag 8 that I know of, maybe more. Those are some very distinct and important races, right? Yes, I will agree. Those. All right. In that case, see, it's a good thing that I put human races in the thing, because then that heads off the whole Mark Agamotto thing, right? So there we go. We got 49 votes. Come on, everybody. There's over 100 of you here. Let's get this thing to at least 80 votes.
Okay. Okay. A and E, that's not a bad answer either. So the correct answer is 1. There is only one human race.
Yeah, I'm okay. Look, here's the thing. It's a weird way to put it, because there really are no races, and having one race doesn't really mean anything. But you know what? Whatever. It's fine. If you want to use that as like your call to anti-racism, okay, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong to say that. Like, whatever. I'll take as many different reasons to not be racist as I can get.
So if you missed it, don't get too rough on yourself. It's okay. You know, we all miss things every once in a while. We're going to learn the truth now. So don't go beating yourself up. The Bible says...
Or not.
Yeah,
you could also beat yourself up, I guess. Especially if you're a race realist. If you're a race realist, feel free to beat yourself up.
Acts 17:26, that God has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on the face of the earth. Did you know that you can take a transfusion?
I also want to point out that this is a verse that's actually very easy, very, very easy to turn into a racist verse because and has determined their pre-apportioned times and the boundaries of their dwellings. That is a very easy thing to read as a advocacy for a ethno-state, which ethno-states are 1, impossible, and 2, attempts to make them never go well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also, this verse has been used for like miscegenation laws.
Yeah. Yeah. Miscegenation laws are dumb and racist. And yeah. Look, if you're going to look for anti-racist verses in the Bible, you can find things that you can pretty easily turn to anti-racism. Acts 17:26 isn't one of them. Bits of "we've been evolutionized" rage. Who's been a member for 14 months, as at the annual level says, irreducibly complex, or like unnecessarily complex, with a series of virtually all of the emojis, including Murphy, Godzilla, Mothra, AIG's a bag of dicks, and both the pelagic and the sessile tunicate, but more of the sessile, so I approve. We'll take a drink. Thank you very much. Speaking of Murphy, if you do want to see Chesh on one of my channels, she is a regular on Top Hats Off now, playing Dr. Tregan, the Adosian Chief Medical Officer of the USS Lexington, the Constitution-class ship. So, head over there. In fact, I believe she just recently, while the show was going, got me the Chief Medical Officer's log for next episode. Because instead of a captain's log, we're doing a chief medical officer's log. So, of course, I had to scare her into getting it by also giving the log as a captain's log to the guy who plays the captain and telling them both, whichever one of you gets me the log first is the one going in the teaser trailer. Suddenly, the thing that I asked Chesh for 4 days ago just appeared right there in my DMs. Weird. Savage Cobra, the Car Invertebrate for $19.99 says, performative colorblindness is not equivalent to opposition to racism. This is
correct.
Also true.
Co-signed.
Yeah, this is also true. Like, the way I like to put it is, we should recognize that the idea of races are not a real thing, and there's actually no such thing, but that is not an excuse to pretend that the social constructs don't exist and don't have effects in the real world, and that those effects actually harm certain people. And therefore...
I like the way that, Go ahead, sorry.
And therefore, we don't get to ignore race or racism, but we still need to remember why it's kind of stupid that racism is a thing, because races aren't real.
I was gonna say, I love the way that, Useful Charts put it. Like, race is a social construct, but racialization absolutely is real.
Yeah. Look, it's kind of like language, right? Language is a social construct. That doesn't mean that you can't use language in ways that actually cause harm to real people. And not just emotional harm, physical harm in many cases. Does that mean that language isn't a social construct? No, it just means that social constructs have actual real-world consequences to real people. And so you need to deal with them. As to Lucifer is my headmate, Ryu for $1.99 says, to be fair, races are about as real as God / joke. I mean, I guess if you're someone who believes that there is no God, then yeah. I am not going to get into that argument because I don't find it to be a fruitful argument, at least not for my channel.
From anybody on the earth that has your same blood type? This truth was known and presented in the Bible way before science found it.
Okay, look, the Bible has an etiology for the existence of humanity. That's common to basically every religious text that is supposed to be giving a broad swath of like the mytho-history of a group of people. Etiologies for the origin of humans are just a dime a dozen, and they pretty much all involve some kind of god or gods coming down and doing something special with the humans. That's not a point in the Bible's favor. The other thing is, let's remember that the people who invented races as a social category were primarily Christians, who would have said that they believe the Bible, that they follow what the Bible says.
Inconvenient.
Yeah.
That's how I know God wrote the Bible. Men can
You know that God wrote the Bible because it has an etiology for the existence of humans that includes common ancestry for humans? Okay, but
Also,
take a drink
what
for that.
really made me laugh about his last comment is he goes, "Hey, the Bible says we're all made of one blood." And then he immediately turns around and goes, "You can receive a transfusion from anybody with your blood type. So it's not just one blood."
Yeah, well, there is that. But yeah, it's not really evidence of the specialness of the Bible that a book written before the invention of the concept of human races doesn't make a big deal about human races. It would actually be more interesting and more compelling if the Bible did have something about races, a concept that wasn't invented until the modern era, and was invented by Europeans in order to excuse the Atlantic slave trade. Because let's remember, race is not something that like Europeans came upon as just like an existing fact about the world that they just made conclusions about. No, they invented it specifically because it helped them justify what otherwise seemed like horribly and immoral things, which in fact were just horribly immoral. And inventing racism didn't actually help. It just made things worse for everyone. And I mean that. It made things worse for the people who were the quote-unquote advantaged in the situation too. Because, you know what's better for your economy in the long term than slavery? Trade and
slavery.
And non-slave labor.
Yeah, trade.
Trade and non-slave labor are actually better for your economy than slavery is. Turns out.
come up with stuff out of that, like that out of the blue. The Holy Spirit had to help them author that. So, a biological fact that all humans belong to one race. All human beings are Homo sapiens sapiens.
Okay, but that's a subspecies. That's not the same thing as a race.
Yeah, that's a subspecies. That's not a race. But
so,
okay. Whatever, Pete.
Goodness. A race?
I don't want to hear him talk about this crap. This is just... I hate this.
Well, I do want to explain what a race would be and how we can tell that there are no races in the human species. But Roach Fahaku God's minion Keller for 199 says, which Bible verse discusses the rhesus factor? I'm pretty sure none of them do.
No kidding.
So, what would it mean for there to be races in Homo sapiens? Or Homo sapiens sapiens?
Just let him cook.
Well, I want to explain because he's not going to. And I think it's an important thing for people to know what we mean when we say that biologically there are no races, because he doesn't know. He has no clue. So, what a race would be a subgrouping of humans who have less diversity genetically within that group than there is between them and the other human groups, right? So the humans would cluster into these groups where genetic diversity within the groups is actually smaller than between group diversity. But humans actually aren't structured that way genetically. Human populations actually have more diversity within them than they do between other groups, right? So if you characterize the consensus genome between different groups of humans, there's actually less differences between those consensus genomes than there is in total if you actually just measure directly the internal genetic diversity within groups that you define. Which means that we can't actually pick a group of humans and designate them as a race, because the genetic diversity doesn't actually match up the way we would need it to make that determination. Which means that from a statistical standpoint, genetically, there is no such thing as a race in humans. Now, what actually humans do socially is use gross phenotypic distinctions, which are in fact geographically distributed, but are geographically distributed in a continuum, and are relatively minor differences in terms of genetics. And we then use those to determine quote-unquote races. But just the fact that those are continuous variations, and the fact that they are very minor in terms of actual genetic diversity, belies this idea of races being real. So genetically, there just are no races within the species. There could have been. When humans started sequencing DNA, there was no guarantee that we wouldn't find any races. We just didn't. And so anyone who wants to tell you that there are real races is just wrong. And hey, to head off any of the quote-unquote race realists at the past, no, there is no evidence of African humans having intermixed significantly with any non-human hominins. Because that is a thing that some of them believe.
Wow,
See,
I just learned all of that against my will. Thanks, Dapper.
yeah, I've definitely had some race realists come and ask me if African populations had Homo erectus admixture. I'm like, no.
What?
It's like, oh, I'm pretty sure they do. Like, no, they don't.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
There's just no evidence of that.
So we're one blood. So here's the human history from the biblical standpoint. We started with Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
We went through about 1,600 years of history.
Which doesn't actually say anywhere. You have to kind of infer that from the genealogies, but sure, okay, whatever.
They had many sons and daughters who had to marry each other, and it was okay back then. You didn't have much choice, okay?
Okay, bro.
I'm just going to take a
Keep
drink.
going. Just keep going.
I'm taking a drink.
Just keep going.
No, I'm taking a drink first. And I'm going to keep going.
And then eventually we got to Noah and his sons. And from last week's presentation about Noah's Ark, we know...
We're just going to ignore the wives. I mean, the Bible mostly ignores them by just calling them and their wives, but... Also, here's a weird thing. So Noah is given a wife, but his sons' wives are always just referred to in the plural. So why do creationists always seem to insist that it was just one wife per son? It would help their genetics and their whole, labor availability on the ark if they just said each of Noah's sons had, 4 wives.
Well, it's also because the text says 8 people. So.
Okay. I forgot about that part. Oh, well.
It doesn't preclude them from taking wives later, but also that gets really cringy when you think it out.
That would have had to be daughters or nieces. Which would have been happening anyway, I guess. What other options were available? Which, hey, Pete, have a worldview that involves less than necessary incest. Just,
that the world became only, where they were thinking of only evil continually, and God had to bring a judgment. That judgment reduced the human population to 8.
Only evilly.
About 4,600 years ago. After 1,400 years of history of the flood, 4,600 years ago, approximately, going by Bible genealogies.
Right, and?
So, from Noah and his sons, they started repopulating the earth again, and God told them to disperse. They didn't disperse. They started building this ziggurat to the heavens.
Ziggurat.
Ugh.
Woo! That's a good one.
Wow.
I'm writing that down.
I'm taking a drink. That's that one hurt my brain. For any of you who might not know, it's ziggurat, and also the Bible doesn't actually say it's a ziggurat, even though it probably was that the authors were thinking of.
To become their own gods, at which time God.
Also, okay, here's the thing. It doesn't actually say that the humans want to become their own gods. It says they want to build a tower so that their name will be remembered forever.
Their name. Yeah.
Right? And then it's...
their reputation.
It's God and company who seem to see this as a threat because it makes the humans too close to the divine. And so God, now apparently threatened by these humans building a tall building, goes down and confuses their language to alleviate this threat. But nowhere does it actually say that the humans were trying to be a threat to God or even trying to become gods. They just wanted their names to be remembered. So, I gotta ask, how does Pete get that? And the answer is because Pete has a theological commitment to mischaracterizing God in Genesis, because the God as characterized in Genesis is in fact not omnipotent. He doesn't seem to be just. He's certainly not infallible. He makes several mistakes or regrets things and says that they're mistakes, right? Like at one point he says that just creating humans was a mistake. So he's not infallible. He's not omnipotent. He doesn't seem to be omnibenevolent. So yeah, as a result, Pete has to reinterpret these passages of Genesis to say things that they just don't say. Like that the humans at the Tower of Babel were trying to become like gods or become gods for themselves. Philip Punk Half Dog Half Canine for $2 says, Pete's giving us all kind of fun usernames today. Yeah.
Confused their languages and scattered them. So there's what a ziggurat would look like, and we think...
He said it again. He said it again. Okay.
I think that's what the...
Also, that's not at all what a ziggurat would look like. Ziggurats were basically stepped pyramids. This is I think this is a Renaissance painting based on the Bible story, where it's actually depicted as a gigantic, Renaissance Europe style tower, which is not what ziggurats look like. Ziggurats, like I said, are stepped pyramids. They have a staircase that comes out one end, and there's usually a ritual site at the top of the ziggurat because they were in fact temples. So yeah, this spiraling tower is almost nothing like what a ziggurat will look like. Here's what it has in common with a ziggurat. It is tall, and people built it. There you go. That's what it has in common with a ziggurat.
Tower would have been like, we don't know if we've ever found that tower, but the people scattered across the earth, they all have their
We
own
never
language.
found the tower, but it was definitely there. Trust me, bro.
I mean,
You
to be
can't blame
fair-
this one on the flood, friend. I'm just
No.
saying, is like, there's other things like, well, this existed, but the flood wiped it out. You can't blame it on that, so where is it?
Well, to be fair, not every building that has ever been built in the past 4,000 years is still around to be found.
I'm just saying, if you think a building that big that was intended to, like, keep your reputation going for all time, you would think we would have found something.
Well, there have
A
been
foundation, anything, like, come
there
on.
have been plausible ideas as to various Sumerian or later Akkadian ziggurats that might have been the inspiration for the story. So, I mean, I guess there's that. I don't know if that counts.
But he's not going to accept that because he's going to go, but those are just inspirations. When we're looking for the actual tower.
Actually, AIG has said that some of them are actually, according to them, candidates for the actual Tower of Babel.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's a thing that they've come out and been like, oh yeah, no, we think that one of these is probably the actual tower. So, yeah. The Ziggurat is apparently a ziggurat piloted by Primaris Marine, says Queen Necra II. No.
I just want to... people who traverse a ziggurat, those are ziggurnauts.
Yeah.
In much the same way that a person traversing outer space is a cosmonaut.
What an astronaut.
Or an astronaut. I think the Soviet version sounds better, the Russian version. Cosmonaut. Cool.
Cosmonaut both sounds better and makes more sense etymologically because you're traversing the cosmos. Astronauts don't traverse stars, NASA. That would be a bad idea. You've never sent an astronaut to a star. It, means someone who's traveling across a star, which no one has ever done. It would be bad. You would die. You'd either get cooked, or if that Yosef Mizrahi guy is right, you might get frozen to death by a cold star. It makes you cold when you get close to it.
As they scattered, they all developed their own cultures.
Here's the problem, though, Pete. We know where the epicenter of human diversity is, and where, like, the spread of humanity is, and it's not in Mesopotamia. It's in, like, eastern Ethiopia. It's right around Addis Ababa, right?
Hmm.
So you're just wrong about where the center of human diversity is and where the center for human migration is. Roshan of Pahako God's Minion Keller for $4.99 says all pre-flood buildings are in the sea/ocean except for the Great Pyramids of Giza. Hope in theory, sorta. Nice. Yeah, actually, so I know Kent has discussed whether or not the pyramids are pre or post flood, and I think he comes on the side of post flood. So I don't know. Although one of the things that's fun is that because creationists generally say that the pyramids are post flood, and that pretty much all of Egyptian civilization is too. What that means is we get to look at the biological diversity that we know that the Egyptians knew of, and notice that it's almost identical to modern biological diversity. And then that means that you have to shorten the time during which all this post-flood speciation that creationists believe in has to have occurred. Because it pretty much all has to be done by the time the Egyptians start writing things down in the Old Kingdom. Which, even for young Earth creationists, means that, like, you've got a chronology of, like, getting from the flood to all modern species having evolved in, like, 300-400 years, maybe. Which, it was already impossible with the full 4,000 years. Cut that down by an order of magnitude, and it's an even bigger problem. Savage Cobra, the Eddie Current Vertebrate for $4.99 says, what if they landed on the star at night? The idea is smarter than much of what Pete has said. Yeah, you gotta go to the star at night when it's cold. That's a good point. I had not considered the advantages that would give you. Actually, now that Kerbal Space Program 2 is dead in the water, did they ever make it so that you can't land on the sun? Or I know you couldn't land because there was no surface, but did they ever actually turn on, like, the heat so that the sun would destroy you? Because I know that when it was first released, you could just fly through the sun and nothing would happen. You'd be just fine.
So what we have on the Earth is a bunch of different cultures, not a bunch of different races.
That's true. I'll take a drink.
But our culture's
So,
the right
skin
one, and
color,
yours
are
are
we all
wrong,
the
so change to ours.
To be fair, he hasn't said that, so I'm not going to impute it
He
to
doesn't
him.
have to say it directly.
Well, I'm not going to say that he's definitely advocating for that unless he actually explicitly says something that indicates that. I have to be nice.
All right.
That's my reputation as the guy who's... Yeah, well, you don't. That's why I'm not asking you to change.
Same color or different shades? Different shades.
Okay, we're just saying Kent really thinks the Great Pyramid is pre-flood, but the rest are post-flood copies, which is... Oh, that does sound familiar. Maybe that is his position. That is really weird. Yeah, especially since the Great Pyramid is one of the later pyramids that was built. Huh.
Shades of brown. Did you know there's no white people on the earth unless you're an albino?
Oh my god.
Just take a drink.
We all have this melanin in our skin. It's a pigment that protects us from the bad rays of...
Yeah, Pete. Just like white wine isn't actually white, white people were never thought to be sheets of paper. Like, that was never the idea behind the designation. I hate this so much.
The sun that God gave us to help us live longer. And
God gave us the sun to help us live longer? Maybe you should stop giving people cancer.
We all have varying amounts of that in our skin, and so that's where we get the different skin shades.
Fade Gray says, I'm the Mr. Rogers of dinosaurs. I'll take it. Mr. Rogers was a cool guy.
So just looking briefly at the genetic outlook of what the color was Adam and Eve's skin,
we have to?
A lot of people, of course, the white supremacists would say Adam and Eve were white people.
Supremacist.
Well, there are no white...
Supremacist is not a word. It's supremacist. Supremacist.
Unhide Jillian. None of her comments show up. I'm not hiding Jillian. Right.
Literally, she's typing in the chat and nothing is appearing, so...
Okay. Can you
like, you might have to do it in studio, but...
Did she DM you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've been...
Okay.
Talking about, like, stuff and things.
Alright. I will check on that, because I don't remember having ever hit Jillian. Maybe one of my mods did.
I can't scroll far enough back in the chat to see...
Not seeing Jillian Wren as a hidden user. Jillian Wren, I'm going to look into this, and I'm going to try to figure out why your comments aren't coming up. But I am going to hit play on this. Yeah, I'm looking at my hidden users, and you're definitely not in there. I don't know. Try refreshing.
White people, white supremacist. Are you an albino? No.
Supremacist.
That they have light-colored skin. They have very little melanin. If they have that, if that was their genotype, where they're all the small A's and small B's, which indicates a recessive gene.
Hey, here's the fun thing. There are more than 2 genes that determine human skin color, but whatever. He's simplifying. And look, I know where he's going with this, which is to say that Adam and Eve were probably some kind of mid-skin tone, because that would allow them to give rise to all of the available skin colors that humans have without it being like... without needing any new mutations. But here's the problem. We actually have human genetic information going back way more than 4,000 years, and we actually happen to know that light skin evolved separately in different locations at different times, and it is in fact a mutation, and the ancestral skin color for humans is in fact dark. Humans are ancestrally dark-skinned. Having light skin is something that happened several times in different ways in different groups later on in human history. And yeah, that's just how it is. I can't actually see any chats from Jillian Wren here. This is very strange. I do not know what's happening. Jillian Wren, DM me, and I'll try to figure this out. I don't think I have time to figure it out during the stream, though. I'm very sorry. I would ask if you can send a super chat, but I don't want to ask you to spend money to try to figure this out.
Then all humans after Adam and Eve would have been light-colored.
No, Pete. Mutations are a thing. Taking a drink. Here's the thing.
Oh my god.
The first humans, who weren't Adam and Eve, but were big population, were in fact dark-skinned. And they did not have any of the alleles for white skin. Those were later mutations. Fearmonger says, I think it's Jillian's YouTube. I can't figure it out either. Well, you're definitely not in my list of hidden users, and I don't think anyone has timed you out, Jillian. I don't know. If you have an alt account, try hopping onto that and seeing if you can chat with that.
Okay? If they had all dark genes, capital A's and capital B's, we would have nothing but really dark colored people after.
That's not true either. Taking another drink for that one.
I'm not nice to him. I don't assume good intent with him because he knows better and he's just lying.
Yeah, he's just lying on this. He knows that mutations are a thing, that they can affect things like skin color.
Adam and Eve. But if they were mid-tone, meaning that they had some capitals and some smalls, they can produce many different shades of skin in one generation.
Just
The thing one of the things that gets me is because of how bad the lighting is and how overblown the TV is, the quote-unquote mid-tone Adam and Eve look just as pale as any of the pale humans.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, hey, there's another reason to light your scene appropriately and set the exposure on your camera appropriately, Pete. Although I will say I have seen people in the same shot in a video who were so pale for one of them and so dark for the other that you couldn't actually get them both lit properly with the proper exposure, because all that happened is either the light-skinned person was just completely blown out and clipping the camera, and you could see the dark-skinned person, or the dark-skinned person was the black hole, and you could properly see the light-skinned person, and it was like, yeah, the cameras were clearly not designed to put both of these people in the same shot at the same time. Roshna Fahakoga's Minion Keller for $1.99. It says Andorians. Well, I do like Andorians. In fact, hey, Star Trek Lexington, my Let's Play series, has an Andorian XO who came very close to being killed. I was actually looking at, like, can I actually kill him within the rules of the game? And the answer was actually no, not right now. But he was close. And also, Fitz of We've Been Evolutionized Rage just gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership. So thank you very much. We will take a drink for that. And Savage Cobra, the Ediacar invertebrate for $4.99 says, you know, when I said landing on the sun at night was less dumb than this is what I was talking about. Yeah, no, that checks out. All right, here we go.
Generation. And this isn't showing you that if they were what's called heterozygous, they had a capital letter and small letter for every one of the letters that coded for this trait, then when they had their offspring, they could have had 100.
Does he have mulatto on there listed?
Uh-huh.
Hey, Pete.
Yep.
You know your talks about how totally not racist you're being? Maybe don't put a racialized term as just one of your definitions for skin tone. Maybe don't do that. I don't know.
Mr. I don't see color, and there's only one human race using literally a racialized admixture term. It's just so gross. I'm not used to seeing that in the wild outside of, like, Spanish Casta designations it's like historical
It's an
records.
actual legal term for racial categories in parts of Latin America that were distinct by law and had different rights and privileges based on their racial category. Like, maybe this is not the appropriate use of that word there, Pete. I'm taking a drink.
Yeah, I mean,
just
literally, when I'm
mulatto.
going through parish records and they describe a kid who's being, like, baptized, for instance, it'll describe them as mulatto or mulatto libre. And, honey, that's talking about, like, degrees of servitude.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
but he doesn't know that.
As Metageeky points out, wow, Amacy isn't saying Octoroom either. Yeah, he might as well be.
Good lord.
Jeez. Oh, Pete.
% dark, and they could have had where it was 100% melanin or 10% melanin light. See, the different combinations determine different percentages of melanin in the skin, determining different shades of skin. That's
Your monger says it's an I'm not a racist moment. Yeah. And Roach Fahakuga's Minion Color for $4.99 says, this isn't how pigments or lack of pigments work. And no, it's not. It's much more complicated than this. And yeah, there are certain genes that are dominant over others. Then there are others that have, co-dominance. And there's way more than 2 genes that have an effect on skin color. Yeah. And also, some genes that affect skin color start earlier in life than others. Which, Yeah, there are in fact some stories of some people saying that a baby wasn't theirs because baby was born far too pale skinned for how dark skinned the father was, and it's like, no man, that's gonna get darker as time goes on. That's a thing. That's a thing that happens. Babies are very typically born paler than they will end up, no matter what their race is.
My hair, when I was born, my hair was like a medium auburn color.
Yeah.
And now it's like medium to dark brown.
My sister was born with like straw colored blonde hair, and she's just a brunette now. I mean, she dyes her hair pretty often, but like, yeah, she had very blonde hair. She was little. Savage Cobra, the Ediacar invertebrate for $4.99 says, "This is also what I meant with performative colorblind."
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, Pete. Look, I agree with your goals, Pete, of saying that treating people poorly because of their race is stupid, and I'm glad that you are explicitly saying that you're against white supremacy, even if you don't know how to say a supremacist. You know,
supremacist.
I'm glad that that's not a thing that you're a fan of, but you're going about it wrong. You're going about it in a way that is encouraging and perpetuating ideas that are both incorrect and lend themselves to racism. I know that's not your goal, Pete, or at least I'm going to assume it's not your goal, because I'm going to be reasonably charitable. But
he would be very upset if you tried to tell him that directly.
Probably.
That the things that he's spouting in this presentation directly uphold white supremacy, but you know, that would make him mad because they don't want to be called a racist to their face.
Landon Knoll says, "Well, Dapper Dinosaur, I'm sure some of his best friends are. Insert that M word."
Woo!
Yeah.
All it is. And yet we have people on the earth today and in our culture today that make a huge thing out of color of skin.
Oh, hey, speaking of friends, one of my friends landed in LA today.
Oh. Welcome, I guess.
Yeah. I'll let her know you said so.
And it's just the amount of stuff that you have in your cells. It's so tragic that we're so ignorant of the basic things that we have to allude to these things to act out our evil ways, our hatred on one another.
I guarantee you, this guy thinks that racism is just people directly saying something that is blatantly, obviously racist. He doesn't believe in racist systems.
Probably not. Yeah.
So listening to him talk this bunch of crap, I want to scream and break something.
Yeah, this is sort of like the boomer white guy version of trying to say racism is bad, which is to not actually point out any of the actual real world problems that people face, and instead just say, well, races are dumb, actually. And so, like, the concept is dumb, actually, because of biology, which, okay, sure, but that doesn't get us anywhere. That doesn't help anything. That doesn't solve any of the problems that are currently being caused by racism, whether it be on an individual level, or whether it be on a legal level, or whether it just be the residual effects of previous de jure racist policies, because those effects don't go away simply because laws change.
Can't believe.
Yeah.
In a thing on ABC News, it said more and more scientists find that differences that set us apart are cultural, not racial. Some even say we should abandon that word
Shocking
race.
revelation.
I mean, yeah, some people are saying we should abandon the word race, not until it stops being a meaningful social distinction. That's the thing. While it remains a meaningful social distinction.
When we stop racializing people,
exactly.
Sure.
You can't just get rid of the fact that people are racialized by deciding on your own to individually stop thinking of race as a valid category. It doesn't actually help anything.
And it says the term race is so meaningless that it ought to be discarded. That was back in 1998. Why are we still holding on to that? From the heart the mouth
speaks.
Yeah. The reason that... Can't believe I'm still explaining this. I'm going to take a drink first. The reason we can't get rid of the word race is because it still matters from a social standpoint. And if you could get literally everyone to agree that it's a silly concept, try to fix problems that have arisen because of the concept, and then once you have a reasonably good, have done a reasonably good job of actually erasing the distinctions between people's lives that are the result of that concept, then maybe it would be a good idea to get rid of the word. Maybe. Until then, no, it's still a problem we have to deal with. Basically, as long as there's racism, and even the lingering effects of racism, it's an important concept to keep in mind. Because it is relevant to the lives of real people today, right now, no matter how unscientific the concept is. Savage Cobra, the
Cobra.
Ediacar invertebrate, says, this kind of person thinks that racism ended on January 1st, 1863. Yeah.
Well, racism's illegal now. Plus, you know, America
Definitely
elected
not
a black president once, so racism's illegal and it doesn't exist.
Yep. That is how it works. It also, you know, don't worry about the fact that when that particular black president was being selected, one of the reasons that his party was like okay with it was because he was quote unquote articulate, which basically meant he didn't speak African American vernacular English. Yep.
Talk about racist microaggressions.
Yeah, because
Honestly, that's not even micro, that's just a macro.
yeah, we all know what they meant by he was articulate. It's that
You're
he didn't
so articulate!
Yeah, it's that he did not habitually use African American vernacular English. In part because he wasn't African American. He was never part of that culture,
Ugh.
except by his voluntary association with other black people in America who were. Roshan of Gods
Yeah, this
Minion...
is one of those things. Go ahead. I was just gonna rant. Go for it.
Okay.
Just go.
Roshan of Gods Minion Keller for $4.99 says, if only there was a magic wand to get rid of redlining and similar systems. Yeah, the effects of redlining are going to be with us here in the United States for probably the next century at least. Yeah.
That's why it's not enough to just not be racist. You have to be actively anti-racist.
I mean, redlining was an official government policy well after the Emancipation Proclamation, I'll remind you, that basically said that if black people own property, it is automatically valued less, which meant that it was virtually impossible for black families to build intergenerational wealth and get loans and things like that. Which is one of the reasons why poverty is a persistent problem in the African American community, is because they were legally barred from generating generational wealth, and also having them move into your neighborhood. It wasn't just a saying, well, there goes the property values. It was literally a legal mandate that there go your property values. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's that, and also the fact that, you know, making slavery illegal didn't stop segregation. In fact, it didn't stop segregation to the point where Jim Crow South, you know, existed, and we had to have the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s to intentionally desegregate public spaces.
And none of these things are solved by pointing out that humans don't biologically have races. It doesn't help any of that. And I do think it's an important thing to know that humans don't biologically have races, but that knowledge doesn't on its own solve these problems.
The amazing thing for an evolutionist, and
Laserfan says, who came up with those laws? What kind of country does that? The United States. And I don't know the actual names of the people who drafted those laws. Sorry.
and exciting for a Christian thing is that analyzing the mitochondrial DNA in humans from all over the globe shows unmistakably that all humans on Earth have inherited it from one woman.
That is a mathematical inevitability. I'm going to take a drink for math exists, therefore creationism is true, which is what that argument just amounts to. It is a mathematical certainty that at some point in the past, all currently existing mitochondrial lineages will have a common ancestor. That is not evidence for Eve. That ancestor was almost certainly not the only female human alive at the time that she was alive. That's not how any of that works. Oh. Apparently, I ran out of memory in my browser for the capture of my chat.
Oh.
That's weird.
Oops.
I refreshed and it's back now.
Oh. Okay.
I'm also ending the poll, which only we did get over 80 votes. We got to 90 votes. How many human races exist?
Awesome.
0/1 got 91%. 10 plus got 6%, which I guess is what you could do if instead of going with the normal definition for race, you just go with like how many subpopulations can I possibly identify? Then yeah, 10 plus is reasonable. 6 and 8 each got 1%, which that probably means one person voted for each, and that seems like a misclick. So okay. I would actually, under certain circumstances, if you want to be very loose with the definition of race, say that 10 plus could make sense. If you're going to say, well, if I want to be very loose with the definition, then I could demonstrate that basically any subpopulation counts as a quote-unquote race, in which case there's thousands of races, which, not what I would do, but I can see the argument. All right, here we go. We got a little bit more. No, you know what? No, we're not. Here's the thing.
I'm done.
We're done. We're done. Well, I think we're done with Pete for now. We're not coming back to this with Pete. We've only got like 10 minutes left of this talk anyway, and it's just going to be more of this stuff. And yeah, there's probably going to end with preaching. So I will be on the lookout for a different video for Dapper Reacts, which I believe that Vishanti, I think you're coming back. No, I don't think you are coming back next week, are you?
No, because next Saturday is Yom Kippur, so
Yes.
I'll be busy afflicting myself.
All right. I will either be on my own or I will have a different guest. I know Grayson can't make it. I may ask Chesh. I may ask a few other people. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But I will either have a guest or not on the 12th for noon. But between now and then, on Tuesday, we got Kent with Bent. There is no tutu this time. But hey, there's another Kent with Bent this month.
Aww.
Maybe we could make the tutu happen. It's possible. Also, then on Thursday, I have to double check to make sure that I get it right, which thing is coming out. So on Thursday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, Information and Kinds Will Never Be Defined, which is a chat that I had with Jackson Wheat and a creationist that was actually originally hosted on Chesh's channel, which is why the thumbnail has a goblin with a sign that said, "This is all my fault," because this is all Chesh's fault. But if you are interested in that, that will be at noon on Thursday. I think it was a fun chat, even if it is a frustrating chat with a random young Earth creationist from Twitter. Roshan of Fahako Gods Meaning Keller for 4.99 says, "Isn't Mitochondrial Eve only about an unbroken line of XX humans?" Yes. So basically, because you only inherit your mitochondria from the ovum that went into making the zygote, which then became you, it means that only the parent that produced the ovum can actually pass on their mitochondria to you. And so the mitochondria is actually it's essentially a asexual line of DNA within humans, because it doesn't actually involve any sexual admixture of genetics, which means that your mitochondrial lineage is basically just a lineage of mothers going all the way back, unbroken. Your mothers, all the way back to the point where you get to the one person whose lineage is the only surviving mitochondrial lineage. But that doesn't mean she's your only ancestor who's female from that time, because your genetic code in the diploid section, the rest of your genome except for the Y chromosome, will have an even older common ancestor. So like your chromosome 7 probably has parts of it that go way back beyond her with female line ancestors. So it's just about the mitochondria, and it's just about that lineage from female to female going forward. It's just the ova. And yes, there have been instances of inheritance of paternal mitochondria, but it usually results in a very, very fatal disorder, which means that they don't tend to get passed on beyond one generation. We can safely ignore the possibility of paternal mitochondrial inheritance. So that is 1 week ahead. The only other thing I have to say is, hey, if you like me, if you like a number of the people who have been on this channel, if you like FTFE, Chesh, Jordan from Reason to Doubt, if you enjoy some of my chatters here like Zirlon or Crush the Croxagore or Zarnarenkar, then I would encourage you to go head over to Top Hats Off on Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific. At least for now, we have to talk about what's going to happen when clock changes happen. And watch our show, Star Trek Lexington. It is a Star Trek Adventures actual play. So far, the episodes have ranged from 2 to 4 hours. We have one 4-hour episode, followed by a 2-hour episode, followed by a 3-hour episode, so it's a little inconsistent there. But yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. Like I said, we had very close to some main cast deaths last night. But hey, we have another episode coming up tomorrow. I believe I just got the Chief Medical Officer's log from Chesh. So look forward to a, next time on Star Trek Lexington TV short. And with that, Shanti, do you have anything you want to tell people that's coming up?
I'm still just really slammed schedule-wise until after High Holy Days are over. So if people are wanting basically anything that's not directly related to that, it's probably not going to happen until after October 12th. And this isn't directly channel related, but I do have crazy family stuff going on right now. My aunt has been off and on cancer treatments, and every time she goes through a round, they're successful, but her recent MRI showed 32 growths in her brain, and she's been talking with her oncologist for treatments. So apparently she's gonna have to take specific meds to stave off dementia, and a lot of that is going on top of all the other stuff I've got going on. So if I'm unusually short, I apologize, and it's not an excuse. But yeah, Vishanti's got lots of things going on in her life.
Sorry to hear about that. Well, for those of you who are interested, we're going to be watching, let me double check. Let's see. Episodes 13, 14, 15, and 16 of Power Rangers Jungle Fury, which gets us to the halfway point of the season over on the Discord. So if that's something you enjoy, please head over there and we will do that. Otherwise, I will see all of you on Tuesday. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Toven, Phil Cavara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, Strawberry Vein, Dr. Tapioca Weasel, Elron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Calvin Brostig Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, and Lawless. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.